Some of you have been talking too much, shouting too loud, trying to prove your strength in the noise. But what if I told you that in 2026, the true power isn't in being heard, it's in your silence? That's right, silence is not weakness. Silence is strategy. Silence is preparation. Silence is the weapon of those who are about to rise. Today, we are going to uncover why those who master silence will command influence, gain clarity, and move with unstoppable momentum. You are about to learn the art of quiet power, and when you leave this place, your silence will speak louder than any words ever could. When we think about power, so many of us automatically equate it with noise. We think power is in the loud voice, the booming declaration, the constant expression, the constant posting, the constant talking, the constant proving ourselves to everyone around us. But the truth of the matter is, some of the strongest, most powerful people in the world operate in a level of quiet that most of us fail to understand. There is a potency in silence, a sharpness in stillness, a clarity that comes when the mind is unclouded by unnecessary noise. The first thing silence does for you is sharpen your mind and strengthen your focus. When you stop talking so much, when you stop venting so much, when you stop sharing every thought that comes into your head, your mind begins to organize itself. Thoughts that were scattered, ideas that were jumbled, purposes that were blurred, all begin to come into alignment because silence demands attention. Silence forces you to confront yourself, to look within, to wrestle with your own heart. It is in these moments of quiet that true mental clarity emerges. You see, your brain is like a cluttered room. Every time you speak without thought, every time you fill the air with constant commentary, every time you rush to express, you are adding more clutter to that room. But when you choose silence, you begin to clear the room. You begin to sweep away the debris of distractions and the noise of opinions that do not serve your purpose. And in that clarity, in that focus, you begin to see the path ahead in a way you never could before. Silence also strengthens your focus because it trains your mind to hold attention on what truly matters. When you are constantly talking, constantly scrolling, constantly reacting, your mind becomes fragmented. You cannot concentrate deeply on any one thing because it has been trained to scatter itself across 1,000 minor concerns. But silence is discipline. Silence is practice. Silence teaches you how to hold your attention on a single target, on a single mission, on a single goal. And when your focus sharpens, your results improve exponentially. The people who master silence are able to move with precision, to plan with strategy, to execute with purpose, because their minds are no longer pulled in 100 different directions. Another dimension of how silence sharpens your mind is that it allows you to absorb information differently. When you are quiet, when you stop filling the space with your voice, you begin to notice things that others miss. You hear subtleties, you pick up on cues, you understand nuances, and you see opportunities that others overlook. Silence turns you into a careful observer, a strategist who sees the battlefield before entering it. And in 2026, the world is moving faster than ever, opinions are louder than ever, and distractions are more constant than ever. To cut through the chaos, you must cultivate a mind that is sharp, precise, and able to filter out the noise. Silence is the gym where your mind becomes strong, where your focus becomes unbreakable, where your mental endurance is built to withstand any storm. And let me tell you something, there is a spiritual component to this sharpening as well. When your mind is quiet, your spirit begins to hear the whispers of God, the promptings of destiny, the nudges that guide you toward your purpose. Every great leader, every visionary, every person who has moved mountains has learned that the mind cannot think clearly when it is distracted by unnecessary chatter, when it is entangled in the noise of others' opinions, when it is drowning in its own constant commentary. Silence restores mental energy. Silence gives clarity. Silence trains the focus, and the person who can sit quietly, who can pause, who can resist the urge to speak at every opportunity is the person who will make decisions with power, act with precision, and move in ways that leave others wondering how they did it. When it comes to power, silence is not just a tool for the mind, it is a channel for the spirit. Too often, We fill our lives with so much noise, so many voices, so many opinions, so many distractions, that we cannot hear the most important voice of all. That voice is the voice of God. When we are constantly talking, constantly sharing, constantly reacting, we leave no room for divine guidance. But when we embrace silence, when we step back from the constant clamor of the world, when we allow ourselves moments of stillness, suddenly the Spirit begins to speak in ways we never imagined. You see, God does not always speak in thunder. Sometimes His direction comes as a whisper, a quiet nudge, a subtle prompting in your heart that tells you which way to go, who to trust, what to release, what to pursue. And if your life is full of noise, if your mind is constantly crowded with the chatter of the world, you will never hear it. Silence is the space where the invisible becomes visible, where the hidden becomes revealed, where the answers that eluded you begin to manifest. The Bible says in 1 Kings 19:12 that God was not in the wind, not in the earthquake, not in the fire, but in the still small voice. That still small voice requires quiet. It requires listening. It requires patience. And if you want to move with divine favor, if you want your steps to be ordered, if you want your decisions to align with your destiny, you have to cultivate silence in your life. Silence allows you to distinguish between the noise of your own fears and the whispers of purpose. It allows you to discern between the distractions of others and the instructions of God. When you are silent, you become attentive. Your ears open to the spiritual currents that are always flowing around you. Opportunities that were invisible become clear. Paths that were confusing become illuminated, and you begin to walk in a direction that is guided by wisdom beyond your own understanding. Another reason silence is essential in hearing God's voice is that it teaches humility. When we constantly speak, we are asserting ourselves, asserting our opinions, asserting our desires. But in silence, we acknowledge that there is a higher wisdom, that we do not have all the answers, that guidance is needed from beyond ourselves. And when we humble ourselves, when we quiet our own agendas, we position ourselves to receive revelation, insight, and direction that we could never manufacture on our own. Silence also strengthens your spiritual discernment. In a world full of voices claiming to be the truth, how do you know which voice to follow? How do you recognize guidance that is pure versus counsel that is flawed? Silence gives you the ability to weigh what you hear, to test it, to align it with the Word of God, and to move forward with confidence rather than confusion. Those who have mastered silence understand that spiritual power is not always expressed in volume. It is expressed in obedience, in alignment, in responsiveness to the divine. Every great move of God, every prophetic strategy, every life-changing breakthrough begins first in quietness, in reflection, in listening. And the truth is, the quieter you become, the more clearly you hear, the more strategically you act, and the more effectively your life begins to reflect the purpose that was placed in you before the foundations of the earth. Silence is not absence. It is presence in its purest form. It is attention focused inward and upward. It is a channel through which divine guidance flows, and those who refuse to embrace it remain trapped in confusion, frustration, and delayed destiny. But those who honor it, who practice it, who learn to live in the tension between speech and stillness, they begin to experience clarity, direction, and a sense of purpose that is unmatched. Too often, we mistake business for productivity and noise for influence. We believe that the more we speak, the more we share, the more we engage in every argument and every discussion, the stronger we become. But here's the truth: constant talking and reacting drains your energy, scatters your power, and leaves you vulnerable to exhaustion, frustration, and defeat. Silence, on the other hand, is the ultimate protector of your energy. When you learn to be silent, when you learn to withhold unnecessary words, when you learn to resist the temptation to engage in every conflict or debate, you begin to conserve the most precious resource you have, your spiritual, emotional, and mental energy. Energy is life. Energy is power. Energy is influence. And if you give it away carelessly, if you scatter it on trivial disputes and petty arguments, you will have none left for the battles that truly matter. Silence is a shield. It protects you from being drawn into conflicts that do not belong to you. It protects you from the drama that other people create, the chaos that other people invite, the negativity that seeks to pull you down. When you are silent, you are untouchable by the criticism, the gossip, the opinions, and the attacks that often come from those who thrive on distraction. Silence allows you to choose your battles wisely. It gives you the discernment to decide what deserves your attention, what deserves your words, and what deserves your energy. The foolish fight every battle. The wise fight the battles that matter. And how do you recognize the battles that matter? By first sitting in silence, by first observing, by first listening, by first waiting before responding. Another reason silence protects your energy is that it prevents overexposure. The more you reveal, the more you drain yourself. The more you explain, the more you justify, the more you enter into debates, the more you expend your power unnecessarily. But when you learn to hold back, when you learn to remain silent, when you learn to keep your counsel, you become like a reservoir of energy. You store your strength. You conserve your vitality. You build a capacity to act with precision, purpose, and effectiveness when the moment demands it. Silence also prevents emotional exhaustion. Every argument, every conflict, every debate carries an emotional cost. Every harsh word spoken, every defense mounted, every opinion voiced drains your peace, your joy, and your mental clarity. But silence preserves your emotional well-being. It allows you to maintain equilibrium, to remain centered, to keep your heart and mind focused on what is truly important. And here's something powerful: silence also protects your spiritual energy. When you are constantly engaged in unnecessary disputes, you open yourself up to negativity that disrupts your connection with God. But silence is sacred. It allows your spirit to recharge, to reconnect, to recalibrate. It keeps you aligned with the divine, unshaken by the chaos around you, unshaken by the voices that do not understand your purpose, unshaken by the distractions that would pull you away from destiny. In a world full of noise, those who master silence move with an invisible force. Their energy is preserved, their power is intact, their focus is unwavering, and their impact is multiplied. Silence is not absence, silence is armor, silence is strength. Silence is a strategy that protects the very essence of who you are, ensuring that when it is time to act, when it is time to rise, when it is time to speak, you have all the power you need to dominate the moment, to influence with authority, to lead with wisdom, and to win without unnecessary struggle. Patience is not passive. Patience is power. Patience is a weapon that is often misunderstood because the world around us teaches speed, immediate results, and constant gratification. But the truth is, some of the greatest victories in life are not rushed. They are prepared, they are timed, they are executed with precision. Silence cultivates patience because it teaches you to wait, to observe, to listen, and to act only when the moment is right. When you remain silent in situations where others rush to speak, when you pause before reacting to provocation, when you withhold your judgment until all the facts are clear, you are training yourself in the art of timing. And timing, my friend, is everything. The impatient speak too soon, act too quickly, and often undermine their own success. But the person who masters silence understands that every word, every step, every decision carries weight, and the right timing multiplies its impact exponentially. Silence also teaches you restraint, and restraint is closely tied to patience. When you resist the urge to argue, to defend, to explain, to engage in every discussion, you are exercising control over your impulses. And control over your impulses is control over your destiny. Every moment you choose silence over reaction, every moment you choose observation over confrontation, you are building the muscle of patience. You are preparing yourself for the moments that truly matter, moments that will define your life, moments that will determine whether you ascend to your purpose or remain stuck in mediocrity. Another reason silence cultivates patience is that it allows you to see the bigger picture. When we are constantly talking, constantly reacting, constantly expressing every thought, we are often trapped in the immediacy of the situation. We lose sight of the long-term strategy, the ultimate goal, the divine plan unfolding behind the scenes. But silence forces you to step back, to breathe, to reflect, and to consider the outcomes of your actions before taking them. It helps you align your steps with your purpose and ensures that when you finally act, it is with deliberate power rather than impulsive reaction. Silence also strengthens your emotional intelligence, which is a key component of patience. By sitting quietly, by observing others, by listening more than speaking, you begin to understand human behavior at a deeper level. You begin to anticipate reactions, to foresee challenges, and to navigate relationships with wisdom and grace. Patience is born from this understanding, from the ability to respond thoughtfully rather than react impulsively. And let me tell you something: the world will always rush, the world will always demand, The world will always create pressure to act now. But if you can hold your silence, if you can wait, if you can cultivate patience, you position yourself to act when the moment is perfect, to seize opportunities that others miss, to rise above the chaos and confusion that surround you. Silence is training for your destiny. It is the classroom where patience is developed, where endurance is strengthened, where long-term vision is sharpened. The silent person is not idle, they are strategic. They are prepared, they are ready, and the breakthrough that others chase desperately, the victory that others try to force, the favor that others beg for, the silent, patient person will receive naturally because they have learned the art of waiting, the power of timing, and the strength of perseverance. In 2026, the world is impatient, rushed, loud, and chaotic, but those who master silence and cultivate patience will find that their steps are guided, their paths are clear, their opportunities are maximized, and their influence is multiplied beyond measure. Patience is not a weakness. Patience is a skill. Patience is a force. And silence is the teacher that prepares you to wield it. There is a mysterious power in silence that the world rarely understands. People think that to be respected, to be influential, to be taken seriously, you must always speak up, always assert yourself, always make sure your voice is heard above the noise. But that is a lie. True power is not in how loudly you can shout, it is in how deeply your presence is felt. Silence creates mystery, and mystery commands respect. When you are always talking, always explaining, always justifying yourself, people know everything about you. There is no anticipation, no intrigue, no magnetism. But when you learn to hold back, when you learn to let the silence speak for you, you create an aura that draws attention, that sparks curiosity, that compels others to lean in and pay attention. Silence is magnetic because it communicates confidence. The person who does not need to prove themselves, the person who does not need to fill every space with words, the person who can simply exist in a room without declaring their presence, is the person whom others instinctively recognize as powerful. There is authority in stillness, a force that does not demand recognition but commands it naturally. Another way silence creates respect is by giving your words weight. When you speak less frequently, when you choose carefully when to speak, when you reserve your voice for moments that truly matter, your words become powerful. People listen more attentively because they know that when you speak, it is worth hearing. Every statement carries significance, every declaration is impactful, every insight resonates. Silence multiplies influence because it sharpens the value of speech. Moreover, silence communicates wisdom. Those who talk constantly may give the impression of knowledge, but those who are selective in speech demonstrate understanding. People respect those who observe first, who assess the situation, who measure their response, and who speak only when they have something meaningful to contribute. Silence signals intelligence, discernment, and the ability to govern oneself. It tells the world that you are not reactive, that you are not easily swayed, that you are not desperate for approval or recognition. Silence also creates anticipation. When people cannot predict your moves, when they cannot anticipate your reactions, when your actions are calculated and deliberate, they begin to pay attention. They watch, they wait, they respect the timing of your intervention because it is always precise, always intentional, and always effective. And here is something powerful. Silence fosters authority and leadership. Leaders who dominate through noise often lose credibility. Leaders who dominate through presence, observation, and calculated action gain loyalty, influence, and long-term impact. People follow those who think before they speak, who act after careful consideration, and who let their results rather than their words define them. In relationships, in business, in ministry, in life, silence is a force multiplier. It transforms ordinary communication into powerful statements. It changes ordinary presence into commanding influence. It converts reserved observation into strategic advantage. The world may try to equate volume with value, chatter with authority, speed with power, but those who master silence know the truth. Mystery is magnetic. Mystery commands attention. Mystery inspires awe. Silence gives you the edge that no shouting can ever replicate. And when you understand this, when you embrace this, when you step into your quiet power, people will not only respect you, they will listen to you, they will follow you, they will wait for your word because they know that your word carries weight, that your presence carries authority, and that your silence is not absence but the sign of power in motion. If you want, I can continue with Keynote 6 expanded next so your sermon builds to full momentum. Do you want me to continue? Silence does more than protect you, sharpen your focus, or create mystery. It transforms your relationship with yourself. In a world full of noise, full of opinions, full of distractions, most people never get the chance to truly know who they are. They are defined by what others say, by the chaos around them, by the constant commentary of the world. But when you embrace silence, when you intentionally step back, when you create space to be alone with your thoughts, something powerful begins to happen. Self-awareness deepens and emotional intelligence grows. Emotional intelligence is the ability to understand your own emotions, to navigate them, and to respond rather than react. It is the ability to read others, to interpret motives, to understand the energies in a room, and to respond with wisdom rather than instinct. Silence cultivates this because it forces observation. When you are silent, you stop reacting impulsively. You stop feeding into every argument. You stop chasing validation, and you start noticing patterns in your own behavior, patterns in the behavior of others, patterns in situations that repeat themselves over and over. This awareness is the foundation of power. People who lack self-awareness are like ships without rudders, tossed by every wave, swept by every wind, dictated to by circumstances. But the person who cultivates silence knows how to navigate. They know when to advance, when to retreat, when to speak, and when to hold their peace. Silence also allows you to process your emotions. In a noisy world, emotions get suppressed, ignored, or expressed carelessly. When you are silent, you give yourself the space to feel, to examine, to understand why you are angry, why you are frustrated, why you are joyful, why you are fearful. Emotional clarity leads to emotional control, and emotional control leads to power. It is no coincidence that the most influential people, the most respected leaders, the most effective communicators, all have learned the art of listening to themselves before speaking to the world. Silence also helps you understand your own purpose. In quiet moments, away from the expectations of others, away from the chaos of daily life, you are forced to confront your calling, to wrestle with your destiny, to ask yourself the hard questions: who am I really? What do I stand for? Where am I going? And what am I willing to do to get there? These questions are uncomfortable, but silence gives you the courage to face them, to examine them, to answer them honestly, and to align your actions with your purpose. Another way silence deepens self-awareness is by teaching you humility. When you are quiet, when you stop insisting that your voice be heard above all others, when you stop competing for attention, you start to realize how much you still have to learn, how much wisdom is around you, how much guidance is available if you are willing to listen. This humility strengthens character and makes your influence authentic, not forced. And let me tell you something: emotional intelligence gained through silence is strategic. It allows you to read situations before reacting, to understand motives before making decisions, to anticipate outcomes before taking action. People will underestimate you if you are quiet, but when you act with understanding, when you respond with wisdom, when you engage with clarity and precision, they will realize that your silence was never emptiness. It was preparation, observation, and insight. Silence turns ordinary people into extraordinary leaders, ordinary interactions into strategic opportunities, and ordinary choices into life-changing decisions. The person who masters silence understands that influence is not about speaking the most. It is about understanding the most. It is about being attuned to self, to others, to the dynamics around them, and using that awareness to act with impact, authority, and purpose. Words are powerful, but their impact is multiplied when they are spoken by someone who has mastered silence. In a world full of constant chatter, people have learned to tune out, to ignore, to dismiss the endless noise that surrounds them. But the person who has cultivated silence has a secret advantage. Their words carry weight. They are measured, intentional, and precise, and when they finally speak, the world leans in to listen. Silence multiplies the impact of your words because it creates anticipation. When you speak sparingly, people pay attention. When you do not feel the need to fill every pause, every moment, every conversation, your contributions are noticed. Every sentence you deliver resonates. Every declaration lands with authority. Every insight is considered and absorbed because it emerges from a mind that has been sharpened by quiet reflection. Another reason silence amplifies the power of words is that it allows for thoughtfulness. In silence, you process ideas fully before expressing them. You weigh your words, test their significance, and ensure that they carry purpose. You do not speak to fill space, you speak to deliver impact. The world is full of noise makers, but impact makers are rare, and they are recognized because they speak with intention rather than impulse. Silence also allows your words to align with wisdom. Those who speak constantly are often reactive, repeating what they hear or sharing what they feel in the moment without considering long-term consequences. But silence cultivates discernment. It allows you to choose your words carefully, to respond rather than react, to communicate with strategy and vision. And when your words are rooted in wisdom, they influence, inspire, and move others toward action rather than confusion. Emotional resonance is another dimension of silence at work. When you have practiced stillness, reflection, and observation, you understand human behavior and emotion. You learn how to deliver your message in a way that reaches hearts, connects with minds, and motivates action. Your words become a tool of transformation, not just communication, because they are crafted with understanding and empathy that can only come from quiet observation and reflection. Silence also adds authority to your speech. A leader who does not need to constantly assert themselves, who speaks when necessary, whose statements are concise and intentional, automatically commands respect. People listen, follow, and value their voice because it is clear that their silence is not weakness, it is strength, strategy, and control. Furthermore, silence allows for timing, and timing is critical. The words spoken too soon can be wasted. The words spoken too late may miss their mark. But the person who has learned the discipline of silence knows when to speak, when to pause, when to deliver their message so that it lands with maximum effect. This is the power of influence in motion. Every motivational speaker, every great leader, every visionary understands this principle: speak less, act more, and let your words carry the weight of preparation, intention, and authority. Finally, silence makes your words unforgettable. People do not remember every sentence spoken in the noise of the crowd, but they remember the words of those who speak sparingly, who speak powerfully, and who speak with authenticity. Silence ensures that when you speak, you are heard, and when you are heard, you are remembered. In 2026, the world will continue to scream for attention, to fill every space with chatter, to demand instant reactions. But those who have learned the art of silence will rise above the noise. Their words will move mountains, their declarations will inspire movements, and their influence will expand far beyond what anyone else could achieve, because they understand that in the end, it is not how much you say, but how wisely, strategically, and powerfully your words are delivered.